Our threes are up. It is our number 3 live right here on College Football Today on SportsGrid. It is Conference Championship Saturday around the sport. We've got 6 conference crowns to be decided at the FBS level, including all 4 in those power conferences. Thank you for joining me there. But as we start this third and final hour, there are not just teams playing this weekend that are looking for those conference championships and thus spots in the college football playoff. There are a ton of teams that are idle this weekend, not playing and perhaps already secure in their CFP position. That's what we'll break down here. It's Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh, and Ben Stevens. Let's start with the team ranked 6th in the country that we all expected to play in a Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis tonight, because last week, as a 3-touchdown home favorite against a measly Michigan team that was barely bowl eligible, this would be the year to snap the 3-game skid and not a game, but the game. This would be the year to prove that Michigan would never outdo you once again. In what was done, Ryan Day with the Matt Rule face looking befuddled and a flag plant in the shoe by Michigan. Ohio State losing last week, Joe, in the game, but still, as the committee sees it, number 6 in the country with what seems to be a secure position in the college football playoff, and maybe even hosting a game once again at the Horseshoe in just a few weeks.
Yeah, so I have no problem with Ohio State being in the top 12 after what transpired with the upsets last week. The problem that I have is them being number 6 overall, not dropping more than basically 1 or 2 spots, and still being, above teams like Miami that have a similar record, you can argue. And that's the problem that I have with Ohio State. We do talk about SEC bias on the show a lot. Big Ten bias happened right here with Ohio State because, again, the quality win is against Penn State only. Outside of that, who does Ohio State have a victory over? They beat a 6-6 Nebraska team, got pushed to the limit. There were multiple times where they didn't look as consistent as they have in terms of years past. They won but didn't cover certain games. So, again, I have a problem with Ohio State as high as they are. If we're looking at them in Miami overall, I think Miami has an argument to be in that conversation. I just don't see it. The reason why Ohio State is 6 is because they were one of the top 3 teams to win a national championship as booked by all the sports books across the nation. Where's the quality win?
I think that's totally wrong, and I have Miami pictures. First of all, they beat Penn State on the road. So we talk about Penn State all year, and we talk about big games for James Franklin, and they don't win, and they win games that they should against mediocre competition.
I just have to interrupt. You're betting on Penn State today in the Big Ten Championship.
Doesn't matter. I'm betting them because I believe that they're going to upset today. Doesn't matter. I'm not betting them because I believe up until this point they're a great team.
Does Miami have a win as good as Ohio State's win at Penn State? Your opinion, that's fine. Which of their wins this year would you say is as good as Ohio State's win at Penn State?
No, because of the brand recognition.
No, I'm not asking you brand recognition. Who did Miami beat, in your opinion? You don't have to subscribe
they beat
to brand recognition.
Louisville went toe-to-toe with Notre Dame and lost by 7 on the road. I mean, I understand they lost games, but they pounded Clemson into the ground. That was a 2-loss Clemson team right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, they beat them by 19 points. They rushed for 7.3 yards per carry. They put up a 31 spot.
Louisville, you're now talking about Louisville's win against Clemson. Miami beat them by 7.
But they still covered.
I understand.
After Ohio State.
And here's the thing. That Penn State victory is one of 2 wins against teams in the top 10 that Ohio State owns in beating Indiana.
Okay, but we could talk about Penn State. Didn't cover against Ball State. Didn't cover against UCLA. Didn't cover against Illinois. Didn't cover against Minnesota. I just think the love for Ohio State is absolutely ridiculous.
Now, I would agree with you to a certain extent. They only dropped 4 spots as a 3-touchdown favorite against a 7-win now Michigan team.
They get treated like Alabama, though. They get treated like Alabama. When Alabama used to lose 1 game, they never fell out of the top 10 to keep them in the conversation.
Alabama fell 5 spots after losing by 3 touchdowns as a multiple touchdown favorite in Norman. But to me, there is no arguing Ohio State's resume versus Miami. Miami doesn't have bad losses per se. Ohio State doesn't either. Miami hasn't lost to a team at 500 or worse. Neither have the Buckeyes. Ohio State has 2 wins against teams currently ranked in the top 10. Miami has 2 wins against teams that are above 500 and not a single ranked victory this season. I thought this conversation was going to be about the Buckeyes maybe playing in the college football playoff with an interim head coach, but that is not where
because I just think based off of last week and watching that game play out where they're a 20.5-point favorite and the whole world, it's going to be a blowout. It's going to be a blowout. Michigan has no offense. They lose that game as a 20.5-point home favorite, and they drop 2 spots. I mean, that's ridiculous.
But I agree with you. They should have dropped more. It was a terrible or gutless performance.
Hold on. So Ohio State didn't need to drop more. It's that Miami dropped way too much.
Sure.
Ohio State versus Tennessee. Buckeyes in a rout in terms of resume.
Yeah.
In terms of resume.
Well, they beat your Alabama that you're saying should be in the playoff. Who's better, Alabama or Penn State? Best deep thrower in the college football.
Yeah,
him or Aller? They smashed them in the second half.
That's fine.
You go.
Hold on, that's fine.
Yep.
I think that Alabama is better than Penn State if you play them on a neutral field. That is totally fine. Tennessee does not have a second win against ranked opponents.
Okay, but they smashed Vanderbilt. Everybody loved Vanderbilt.
They didn't smash Vanderbilt. They did not smash Vanderbilt.
They fell behind.
They did not smash Vanderbilt.
They won by 12.
They came back to cover.
They were they covered.
Nashville. There's no doubt about it.
They smashed
Vandy is an even 500 football team.
That's not better, though, than Ohio State's performance against Indiana. This is preposterous.
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, come on. This is almost a waste of time at this point now.
Why? Because we were not agreeing that Ohio State's deserving?
No, because Ohio State is in. If you want odds on Ohio State to miss, I'll give it to you.
No,
whatever you want.
That.
It doesn't make
it's
sense.
Just that
Ohio
we give
State's
them love.
They're not getting that. What love?
They should be ranked 10th.
We were
trying
to condemn Ohio State. Kevin was going to make a point about how the Buckeyes need a change of leadership, despite what Ross Bjork, their athletic director, said this week, because of the failures of Ryan Day against Michigan. It does not change the reality, however, that the Buckeyes are going to play in the college football playoff.
No, but it's again the perception. It's the perception issue. Ryan Day can't win a big game, right? Mario Cristobal can't win a big game. What's the difference? Tell me what the difference is.
Ohio State has big wins with Ryan Day.
Okay,
that's nonsense. I'm sorry. It is.
All right.
Ryan
we
Day,
can agree to disagree.
No,
I mean,
it's not even
why?
agree.
Because I don't buy into the narrative that you think Ohio State's legitimate of a top 7 team.
But
I disagree.
Okay, what I'm telling you is take some time, write down your top 7, and then we'll figure it out. Because I've done this with you many a times, and you say that, and then
I put Tennessee over Ohio State. I would.
Okay.
I would put Tennessee.
For what?
Because I think if they met head-to-head, Tennessee would win.
Well, guess what? Every projection is that we're going to get Ohio State.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They set lines. That doesn't mean it's right.
You're interrupting something that you didn't need to interrupt.
All right.
What I was going to say is every projection is you're going to get to bet that game next week.
Good.
Ohio State versus Tennessee.
And I'll take the points.
That's great. That's awesome. And I know you'll take the money line. I'm letting you know that we're supposed to get Ohio State, Tennessee, which I think is one of the more fascinating things heading into today, is that if you said, Kevin, project the field if all the favorites win, I would think Ohio State actually gets up to the 6th seed, is what I would expect. The books are telling us they are not jumping anyone who is playing today. They are not jumping the loser of the SEC or Big Ten championship games, and I am surprised by that notion.
I would agree with you as well, because there is a certain precedent in conference championship games in years past in losses harming a resume. And in the direct comparison against Penn State, the head-to-head has been one of the biggest things for the CFP selection committee. Both teams would have 2 losses. Both against Oregon and Ohio State would have the win directly over the Nittany Lions, despite the fact that Penn State kind of earned a spot in the Big Ten title that Ohio State squandered. The rest of the college football playoff field that is in next.
If they beat South Carolina, they're going to 10-1. So if you're on this, you're TCU trained. Listen. Mark and Chavi have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. So I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight. Only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
It is conference championship Saturday, but some teams that are not playing in their conference title game might already know their fate into the college football playoff. And then, Kev, there are some teams that don't play in a conference. And yet, despite that, with the expanded college football playoff, Notre Dame sits here on this first Saturday in December, feeling very comfortable about being in the CFP, in hosting an opening round game. But because the Irish do not play for a conference championship, they can never earn the opening round bye as one of those four highest ranked conference title winners. So despite the fact that Notre Dame is now number 4 in the country with a big win last week against USC in LA and an 11-1 resume, Notre Dame will not get the opening round bye, but more than likely they will host a college football playoff game.
Which, again, I don't know for these schools, like if you're the Notre Dame AD, are you like, see, this is why we'll never enter a conference because we get to play in South Bend. Like, you can keep your bye. We don't necessarily care.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know how that works. I said this last week. The most surprising thing maybe of the entire season is that Notre Dame could have lost last week to USC, and I think they still would have been in the field. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they did not lose is what's going to keep them locked into where they are. I think what's really incredible is if we had last year's format, Lisi, Notre Dame would be in the playoff. Yeah. A 4-team format, Notre Dame not playing in a power conference would have survived and made, despite losing to NIU at home. It speaks volumes to how dominant the Irish have been. Again, a lot of teams are benefiting from what feels like, hey, this schedule spot worked here, this worked here. But Notre Dame is not leaving any doubt in the games they've played.
They won 9 straight by 35-plus points per game, and a lot of people liked USC last week. At 7.5, I liked them, in terms of a potential step-up spot for Lincoln Riley. And what happened? It was close early, but in the second half, the defense takes over. That secondary is as good. We talk about Texas. Yeah. That secondary was giving up 147 passing yards to opposing offenses. Now, USC did move the football, but, I mean, one of the best secondaries in all of college football. So when you can run it, you have a veteran quarterback and you're physical on the interior lines, you're going to be there. And again, if the matchup is Notre Dame and Alabama like we see, it's going to be a fantastic game.
And that secondary, by the way, made sure the Irish covered that number with 2 consecutive 99-yard interception returned and then followed by a 100-yard pick six in Xavier Watts, one of the best defensive backs in the country. What's fascinating about Notre Dame, they were favored to reach the college football playoff before this season got underway. I remember it was minus 170 because I had the Irish in my field. Their win total was 10.5. The under had the juice at minus 170. We expected Notre Dame to be a multiple-loss team and still contend for a CFP spot. They lost the game nobody expected as a near 4-touchdown home favorite against Northern Illinois, and then beat everybody else rather badly. Again, 10 games against non-MAC teams this year. Notre Dame 9-0-1 against the spread on those closing figures. Now we get to some teams that people have argued throughout the year. Are they truly deserving based on their resume? But they have handled business in games they were expected to win and did exactly that. Indiana, in its first ever season, in 137 years as a football program, won 10 games, and then they won 11, hammering Purdue in the old Oaken Bucket last week, 66-0. Again, Lisi, some people might be mad that IU is in the college football playoff, but let me state that again. The Hoosiers are in the college football playoff.
No, deserving. I mean, when you win in a rivalry game, 29.5-point favorite, you win 66-0, especially coming off the loss to Ohio State, and you rebound in a big way. I mean, granted, they did lose by margin in Columbus, but that doesn't matter. An 11-1 football team, 5.5 preseason win total. Kirk Cignetti, Curtis Rourke, they're deserving. Again, you look at what happened last week with all the upsets, to make the argument that, again, 11-win football team, they could be seated higher as well.
Than Ohio State, you're saying?
No, not Ohio State. Don't start.
No, I'm just making sure. No,
But I'm just saying the way here.
That was very subtle.
That was subtle. That was good. That was nice. And again, we can agree to disagree in certain things, and I understand what you're saying. But again, we bashed Indiana for much of the year in terms of resume. They've done it. The one loss, and again, they were in it for a half.
I actually think that this desk has been, I assume, kinder than most to Indiana. Quite frankly,
we have.
Here's my thing on IU.
Yeah.
They're getting in. They should be in. Purdue has the hardest strength of schedule this year of anyone in the Big Ten. Why? Because they played all of them. Who beat them by the most? Indiana. Now, they ran it up. That's fine.
Yeah.
Indiana's going to be the 10th seed. There's actually some aspects of this that, are pretty much locked in, right? They're going to be 10. They're going to then very likely either go to Georgia, maybe Penn State, right, or Ohio State, right? It's probably that trio for the 7 seed you would expect. If they get destroyed, do we look back then and say, all right, we got to fix something that we did here? We would have been better off with, and I know, we would have been better off with Ole Miss than Indiana.
I don't think we will say that. I think we will say that in this new landscape of college football, Indiana was the beneficiary of an easy slate. They took advantage of it. And then when we all argued that games should matter, they got spanked in the game that mattered most in the college football playoff. I don't think the committee ever will, and I think this is correct, at least in my estimation, ever say that based on your resume and what you have done, we should have gone back to another team with a different resume to make it happen. They would have said that had Indiana lost games they were not expected to, it would have been a different story. And to IU's credit, they have won all the games they have been expected to win, and most of them by margin, 10 of the 11.
Well, last year they didn't allow Florida State into the college football playoff because they didn't think they would be competitive. Without Jordan Travis, right? And they started to do. That's why we have an expanded playoff this year, too, to let teams like Indiana come in. I mean, the blowouts are going to be part of the situation, especially when you're allowing group of 5 teams in. I mean, anything could happen in a one-game setting. We know that. But blowouts are going to happen. They happen in bowl games, happen in playoff games.
I also want to make sure we don't have revisionist history. The average margin of victory in our 10 years of the college football playoff semifinal was 19.7 points per game. Last year was the first year in a decade both games were decided by a single score in the semis.
Which is very well said, and that's there will be blowouts. I just think, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
When we get our final 12, I think unanimously we will know we didn't put the 12 best in. Will we be comfortable with the results of that is my question.
It's a good question, and it is a learning experiment on the fly in the first year of the 12-team era. Some picks for Conference Championship Saturday up next.
If they beat South Carolina, they're going to 10-1. So if you're on this, if you're TCU trained, listen, Mark and Chavi have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on Conference Championship Saturday. It is college football today on SportsGrid. Some of our betting cards for the other conference title matchups outside of the Power Four, and maybe a few sizzles in there as well. And, of course, to end out the show, our big game best bets, our best wagers for each of the Power Conference title matchups. But, Kev, before we dive into the betting cards, a little bit more conversation around this CFP field and how it will factor out.
Well, the thing that we didn't get the chance to get into yet that I do think is really, really important to discuss, because one of the power brokers in this sport could go through a massive change this offseason, and it is, I know, something I've asked about for the entirety of this show's existence. Is Ryan Day going to get fired? Mm-hmm. I know I've asked it way earlier. I have a tendency to do that. Maybe it is what it is. Though I might be right about Gundy. Just saying. We'll talk about a lot of this stuff next week.
Right.
My question, though, now with the Ryan Day conversation hitting its peak, what does he have to do, Lisi, Ryan Day, to keep his job? National title, obviously, right? Is making the game enough? Is making the semis enough? Because the conversation around Ryan Day leaving Columbus has never been hotter.
No, he's got to get to the national championship game, at least. And again, who does he beat in the process? Is it Tennessee? Is it going to be a team like Indiana? I'm just saying. I'm throwing teams out there right now because we don't know how the matchups will play out. But if he plays in Alabama or he plays a top-tier blue blood program, right, and they lose, he is done. There is no doubt in my mind that he is out. If he loses again to Oregon as well, done. I mean, you go through it.
There was a question as well, because Ohio State is still into the college football playoff field, if they might be doing so with an interim head coach. That was Brian Hartline, because Chip Kelly was getting fired as well for a terrible offensive scheme against Michigan a week ago. Kevin, it will be fascinating to see. I will say, though, the Buckeyes are still the third-priced team to win a national championship at 4-1, only a $0.50 behind our co-favorites at this moment, which, as of last check, is Texas and Oregon at plus 350. Championships can forgive a lot of wrongdoings. I still think there are some in Columbus, either associated with the program or just those passionate fans, that would say even a national championship does not excuse a 4-game losing skid in the game.
Yeah, I think for me, the Michigan loss changed everything, because that was never supposed to happen. Amazing call by you, but clearly even you agree it's an indefensible loss that they had last week.
Yeah.
Here's then the follow-up. Who is the guy to replace him?
Yeah.
and we had a conversation about Belichick on this desk. You know, I've kind of this year, I've had some issues with the NFL. Such a college guy, it hurts.
Yeah.
Like, we see how quickly guys can get fired in the NFL. And people, we had a conversation, me, you, Donnie, Yarnell, about Vrabel to Ohio State.
Right.
I'll just say this. If you're Vrabel, you're nuts if you take the Giants job and go work in that situation over taking the Ohio State job. I think you're absolutely crazy.
A lot of people have asked, if you fire Ryan Day, who do you get? Is there anybody better? It wasn't like Ryan Day was this hot, upcoming offensive coordinator that had proven it at a lower power conference school and figured his way to Columbus. He was handed the keys, or as some might say, stood on third base, and has faltered a few times in the games that matter most to those in Columbus. The loss to Michigan, by the way, not just the fourth consecutive to the Maize and Blue, the first for Ohio State under Ryan Day in his 6 seasons at the helm in full against an unranked foe. That was Michigan a weekend ago. All right, let's fire through some of the betting cards for Conference Championship Saturday. We'll have some more on the other side of the break as we look at quarterback comparisons as well. But, Lisi Guy, you are the mastermind. So why do you not begin with our 2 Group of 5 Conference Championship games that we have on this Saturday as well?
Yeah, we'll talk about the Sun Belt Conference. Marshall getting 5.5. I like Huff in terms of the underdog, averaging well over 170 rushing yards per game. I think they can run the football. Give me the Thundering Herd plus the 5.5 points. And we talk about the defense for Miami. Last 8 games holding opposing offenses to 92 yards on the ground. Gabbard and Martin are the difference, minus the 2.5. Do like the over in the game, but I'm laying the 2.5 with the Red Hawks.
So you like the over in the game. I like the under. I bet it early this week at 44.5. It is now 43.5 in some spots, back up to 44 in a hook in others. We have 2 of the top 20 scoring defense is in the sport that know each other well. And you look at the regular season matchup, another rematch for a Week 8 game that we are seeing on Conference Championship Saturday, like in the SEC between Georgia and Texas. Miami of Ohio won that game 30-20 over what this number would be today in the Motor City. But the Red Hawks had a 30-6 lead entering the fourth quarter before the Bobcats, with some backups, scored 2 late touchdowns in the final 5 minutes or so. Anyway, we're back on college football today with more bets and quarterback comparisons next.
If they beat South Carolina, they're going to 10-1. So if you're on this, you're TCU trained. Listen. Mark and Chavi have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid. 2 tasks to accomplish in this segment. We round out our betting cards for the other conference championship games, the 2 at the group of 5 level. In the MAC championship game in Detroit, the Sun Belt title game in Lafayette, Louisiana, and a quarterback comparison to set the stage in the atmosphere for what is at stake in our 4 Power Conference Championship games on this Saturday. I'll round out my betting card. I already said it in the MAC title game, under 44.5. Need some sizzle for the Sun Belt Championship game. Zylan Perry, the sophomore running back for the Raging Cajuns, anytime touchdown, minus 115. He has scored 4 times this season, but 3 times in the last 3 weeks for the Raging Cajuns, who are one of the 15 best scoring offenses in the sport. In Michael DeZormo's offense, I think they score some points against a Marshall team that allows less than 200 yards through the air, but more than $188 on the ground. Bill Davis is the lead back. I still expect Zylan Perry to find the end zone. And then I felt inspired for a sizzle. You know, I don't live here in the Great Garden State, so some of my player prop options are limited for now. Cade Klubnik, though, over 250.5. His number 261 and a hook for the Tigers today in the ACC championship game against an SMU defense that against teams above 500 have allowed a lot of passing yardage this season, and a Clemson rushing defense that is as bad as we have seen in a decade. More than $150 on the ground. Rashard Smith, 70+. Some discounted numbers that are not their full props. Put them together, parlay sizzle, plus 147.
I love it. Wow, this guy loves it. This guy loves a good parlay.
Yeah,
how about that?
I would love it. Could be a drone play. Tri-State.
All right. Well, the Tri-State special. All right. Look, simple for me. Action in both of those games. Parker Navarro, quarterback for the Bobcats, over 65.5 rush yards, averages over 95 per game in MAC play with 3 straight of 100+. This number stays low. One, expectations is not that Navarro is going to be some elite runner. Add in the fact that it did go under against Miami of Ohio earlier this year. And I think we get a number that we have to try and take advantage of. I don't hate if you say, hey, forget the 65.5. If he's going to do it, he gets to his number. Take the 100+ and try and ride that up. Then I'm going to give the Marshall, Louisiana under 58 a chance here. A lot of it has to do with Marshall staying competitive in this game. Games under a touchdown. We know how much they like to run the football. I think this total's come up due to 2 high-scoring games. One against JMU last week, and then I believe the other was against Old Dominion.
Yeah.
And those Marshall totals were about a touchdown lighter than this number here. So I'm trying to sell high, I guess, on the offense.
Both games for the Thundering Herd in their last 2, winning outright as an underdog to earn this spot in the Sun Belt Championship game. Marshall and Charles Huff, Michael DeZormo and Louisiana battling tonight in that Sun Belt title matchup. So those are the 2 group of 5 games that we have on Conference Championship Saturday. Now the quarterback comparisons as we set the stage over these final 25 minutes or so on College Football Today for the Power Conference title games in those QBs that you will see on display. Let's start tonight in Indianapolis, Lisi guy. Drew Aller for Penn State. A number that is a little bit more limited than that of Dylan Gabriel. 200.5 for the Nittany Lions signal caller for the Ducks. Dylan Gabriel, 235 and a hook. Now, Dylan Gabriel has only thrown for 300+ once this year in Oregon's best win of the season at home in Austin against Ohio State. How prolific will that Ducks offense be today against one of the best defenses in college football in Penn State?
I think this game trends to the over, so I expect Dylan Gabriel to put up numbers, 250, 275 in that area. Expecting them to throw for 350 or 300, I think that's a tough ask in terms of this battle. But again, that's what they do. They push tempo. They throw to open up the run with Jordan James, so we'll see. I think he gets through that 235.5. If not, and it's a game like we saw with Wisconsin where he throws for 185, 190 yards, and he's limited, then Penn State potentially will win this ball game outright. But if we're looking comparison, Drew Aller has 2 300-yard games, right? One came against Kent State, the other came against USC in the come-from-behind win. He has to get through this number to be competitive, number one, and to just get the monkey off his back in terms of big matchups. He didn't step up against Ohio State 3 games last year, under 50% completion percentage. It's do or die, not just for James Franklin, Kev, but for Drew Aller tonight. I think he does it because it's a must.
It's a really interesting thing for Drew Aller, the rush prop, 19.5.
Yeah.
He's coming off of an over. He's not hit it in back-to-back games. The Ducks last week sacked Demond Williams, the Washington quarterback, 10 times.
Yeah.
I don't know if because college can get wonky. No, like what can get wonky where that was a design run, they credited a sack, but I'm trusting how they graded it all out. It's 10 sacks, which is an insane amount for a single game. Does that overinflate what we expect the Ducks to be able to do today to limit Aller, who's not a massive runner but can be opportunistic? And again, at 19.5, don't think, it's so low. We know how sack yardage obviously factors in. I went into it hoping to bet one of the two guys over their numbers in terms of the rushing, and I couldn't really find much of an advantage there. I would actually lean under on Aller's 19.5.
And Dylan Gabriel, in terms of his passing touchdown number, he had thrown at least 2 passing scores in the first 8 games for Oregon. Only twice has he got to multiple touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. 218 yards or less in the last 3 for Oregon. 5 touchdowns to only 1 INT. We questioned Oregon up front in a couple of things earlier this year. They allowed 7 sacks in the first 2 games. Only 5 sacks in the last 10 for this Oregon offensive line. Let's get to the SEC championship game today in Atlanta. Neither quarterback played a great game. The first time these two teams met in Austin, Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions. It did not cost Georgia's team. It did, however, Kev, the 3 total turnovers for Quinn Ewers cost Texas in that game directly in the first half, resulting in 14 Georgia points. How do you compare these two quarterbacks today in Atlanta in that SEC title matchup?
Well, I think, one, Carson Beck maybe playing the best football at the right time. I don't know. I mean, does 11 touchdowns, no picks in his last 3 games off the loss work for people? I don't like. Does them score? The fact that they scored 44 against Georgia Tech, does that not count for people? Like, I know I'm using a UMass game. I understand that, but like the whole thing was, well, Beck was never going to figure it out, and off of what I thought was his low point as a college quarterback against Ole Miss, because I thought that was kind of the breakout spot where the year prior he had played his best game as a Bulldog. Arguably against Ole Miss, he has stepped up, and more than anything, Lisi, clean football.
Yes.
We have not gotten to the point yet. I believe we will get there in the playoffs to bet over under half an interception.
Right.
But I bet you today, back people would be firing away to throw a pick. He threw 3 of them last time against Texas. He has to protect the football.
He does. Last 3 games, to your point, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. They've won 3 straight. So, again, he's playing clean football entering this matchup. I don't know if I can get you in on this, brothers in arms, but over 300 for both quarterbacks in that battle. I think Beck breaks out in a big way, and I think they push tempo. I mean, 600 yards plus for both guys.
If you give me the 2 teams to combine, yes, I don't even trust Quinn to finish this game. I don't trust him to finish the game. And he shouldn't be out there.
And I said, right, that I'm backing Texas today because when you look at the numbers from the first game and how the game flow played out in Austin, and it's a big if Quinn Ewers can be clean and efficient today, I favor Texas. He wasn't even clean and efficient last week against A&M. Kev, you mentioned it. 2 turnovers right around the red area. Texas's defense did not allow a point last week. It was a pick 6 that resulted in A&M having any bit of life. ACC championship game, Big 12 championship game. Our 4 quarterbacks, Clemson's Cade Klubnik. For SMU, it's Kevin Jennings. In the Big 12 championship matchup, Iowa State's Rocco Becht, Arizona State's Sam Levitt. Lisi, give me a guy you are focusing on first and foremost.
I think in terms of it's Sam Levitt, but it's on the ground, 23.5 rushing yards. I think when he's mobile and he's breaking contain, that opens up Cam Scatterbo. I think he gets over that number.
I think Jennings, and here's why, because I don't have any action on Jennings today. If SMU wins and he plays great, the conversation then does shift to, do they have one of the best quarterbacks in college football? Because the numbers have been saying yes. Biggest test for him today.
He took over as the starter at the beginning of the TCU game. SMU has not lost a game since that very point. Our big game best bets on Conference Championship Saturday. Next.
If they beat South Carolina, they're going to 10-1. So if you're on this, your TCU train, listen, Mark and Chavi have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Conference Championship Saturday in college football starts in just about 15 minutes. It is time for our big game best bets live right here on College Football Today. It's okay, Dubs. That's Kevin Walsh. It's the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi, and I am Ben Stevens. The first conference championship games that we have on this Saturday in Detroit, it's the MAC title game between Miami of Ohio and Ohio. At the power conference level, it's the Big 12 championship game in Arlington at the home of the Dallas Cowboys, AT&T Stadium, where a newcomer in Arizona State is the higher-ranked team, and depending on where you look, could be a favorite or a very slight underdog. Iowa State into the conference championship for the second time in the last 5 years in the Big 12, looking for their first ever conference crown. And Lisi guy, back and forth all week, this spread really has gone. Where we sit on this conference championship Saturday, just about 15 minutes out from kick in the state of Texas, it is basically a money line pick 'em. These numbers even closer to each other than they are right here. The winner of the Big 12 championship game will play in the college football playoff. Who gets that on?
Well, I think it is Arizona State in regards to the matchup. I think they're a little bit more physical in the interior. They can run it, but I still believe they can run the football, and that opens up play action. I understand their number one wide receiver is out. To me, it doesn't matter. I think they put up points. I think they get into the 30s today. Typically, this game does trend to the over. Over last year between Oak State and Texas, going over the 50.5. They're a hot team. Arizona State's the right side, in my opinion, but I love the over today.
Oh, so you like Arizona State. Interesting. Intel comes in at the very last second, boosting up the confidence level on the Iowa State Cyclones. Bounce back. Make sure you're saying it correct here. A lot of quarterbacks on the card today. Rocco Becht played arguably the worst game of his college career last week against K-State. One of the better teams in the Big 12. Iowa State wins that football game despite under 40% of his passes completed. He now goes up against, I think, a much weaker Sun Devils defense here, and I trust Rocco Becht and I trust Matt Campbell to get the job done. I think we talk about battle-tested, coach-wise. I think Campbell was more comfortable today than Dillingham.
Yeah. Played in the conference championship a couple of years ago.
Back in 2020, they did lose to Oklahoma. Iowa State still in search of that first conference crown. They've been playing football at Ames for 127 seasons, dating back to 1895, and enter this Big 12 championship game with 10 wins for the first time ever in the history of that program. Arizona State, also a 10-win team. They won just 3 games a year ago in the debut season for the young Kenny Dillingham as the head man in Tempe. Arizona State was picked dead last in the preseason poll in the Big 12. In their first year in this conference, they will play in a Big 12 championship game today. For me, I think the key matchup that favors ASU is their ground attack in one of the best backs in the country that can do it all from the line of scrimmage, Cam Scatterbo, against an Iowa State defense we have not seen perform this poorly for a season since Matt Campbell's very first back in 2016 when they allowed more than 200 yards on the ground per game. They're giving up $174 this season. Cam Scatterbo's number is skyrocketing right now on the ground, but I trust in him and Sam Levitt to play clean football, the highest graded true freshman quarterback in the country this year, to lead Arizona State to a moneyline price, an outright victory, a Big 12 championship, and a spot in the college football playoff. Before we turn things over to the ACC championship game, just quickly, the CFP implications of this one, Kev. There is no doubt that the winner earns an automatic bid to the CFP. But number 15, number 16, is there any chance that either Arizona State or Iowa State would leapfrog a Boise or an ACC title winner?
So I do not think that you are going to see Boise jumped. Their win was against still a top 20 team in UNLV. They won it by 14 points. They only have the one loss. I think they're clean through. SMU is not going to get jumped for beating Clemson, undoubtedly. The question is actually, can Clemson jump either of these teams? Clemson is right next to them and is playing a much higher-ranked team. My expectation, this is just me, is that the committee is going to jumble up the ACC trio and put Clemson at the front, say, well, they beat SMU and they won the conference. And that is actually how they will keep Alabama in the playoff. And I know we're about to break this game down, if Clemson wins, I do think SMU will be left out. And I think Clemson actually gets all the way up to 4th and gets a bye.
Wow, brand recognition. That would happen if Clemson does crack the playoff. They're 8-0 in terms of ACC championship games, so we'll see how it plays out. They're going to be up against it. I believe that SMU is the right side in terms of this battle. They're more complete offensively, rushing for over 170 yards on the ground, 200 through the air, have the much better defense. And again, I think SMU, in my opinion, attacks Clemson on the ground. They gave up 267 to Lenora Sellers in South Carolina. That could lead to time of possession, and under this 55.5, I think this game is a dead under later tonight.
So that is your best bet for the ACC title game
SMU
in Charlotte.
Under.
Joe Lisi, under 55.5. There is no doubt in this new era and landscape of college football, in the 12-team college football playoff format, where it stands now, that Clemson can be that bid stealer in this ACC championship game. I know you believe Clemson is live. How is the way you would approach the ACC title?
Yeah, I think my most comfortable action is Klubnik over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Now, he's not missed that in back-to-back games. I never want to be misleading. 9-3 to the over. You can guess which 3 games he missed it in. Their 3 toughest: Georgia, Louisville, and the loss again to South Carolina. But SMU has allowed 20 of their 30 touchdowns to be passing touchdowns. With that type of volume there, that's the way I look for Klubnik to attack this football team. And I'll add this last point. The one thing I would say in defense of Clemson, and I shouldn't even bother, but is when we go, man, see, they're such frauds, da-da-da-da, and they have lost their step-up games. But at least they played step-up games. They don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play South Carolina. That could have been Houston Christian and Nevada or TCU, which is who SMU played.
Win TCU.
What if they blow?
Oh, did they?
Do you think that they get benefit? SMU blows out Clemson, 21+ today.
Will they get benefit?
Yeah, like in terms of brand,
SMU,
maybe a little bit better ranking.
I think
they're capped at 3.
Yeah, I think they're capped at 3. I don't think they would leapfrog the SEC title winner or the Big Ten championship winner, but I do believe SMU will win the ACC championship because of what Clemson has done in those step-up spots. I don't think they put up a ton of offense in terms of scoring production today. I lay the 2.5 with the Stangs in the ACC championship. Big Ten title, SEC title at stake next.
If they beat South Carolina, they're going to 10-1. So if you're on this, you're TCU trained. Listen. Mark and Chavi have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. So I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The rest of our big game best bets for the Power 4 Conference Championship games on this conference title Saturday, live right here on College Football Today. He's feeling feisty. Maybe you heard some of that commercial break conversation. Let's get you set for the other two games that we have, the big two perhaps in the Power 4. We start in Atlanta. It is Georgia and Texas, a top 5 tilt to decide an SEC champion. And Texas, in its first year in the league, is a favorite to win its second consecutive conference crown against a team that has only been an underdog as the Dogs twice in the last 4 college football seasons. Lisi got 2.5-point spread in favor of the Longhorns. Total stands at 49.5. What is your best bet for the SEC championship?
Last 6 games in the SEC championship game, teams have totaled 67.3 points per game. This total is set at 49.5. I think we get points aplenty. Alternate as high as 59.5. I think it is Carson Beck. 175 and 3 interceptions last time they played. Not today. He's riding right now a 3-game streak where he hasn't turned the football over, 11 touchdowns. Finding the tight end early and often, that could be the key to opening up that secondary for Texas. I think it's Georgia, but I love the total today, Kev.
To add on to Lisi's point there, this total, a touchdown lighter than the first meeting between these teams. And yes, that game only featured 45 points. There were a number of turnovers, though, that didn't actually help that total out in the second half. And it's the chance then to buy low. This is the same number we saw last week with Texas's game against the Aggies in A&M, and I think Georgia's far more the over team. I don't want to leave this segment, though, without saying, go Dogs. I mean, what are you doing?
Go Dogs.
No, really, no, look.
Go Dogs.
What are you doing? Hey,
he is.
I know you're.
I know.
Here's the thing. I'll put it to you like this. How you feel about this is how I feel about the next one.
Yeah.
Really?
I guess sometimes you got to do it.
You got to do it.
But you don't have to do this. Where's this game?
Everything in my being saw the Georgia Bulldogs when this line opened up for the specific SEC title matchup as an underdog, booked as the odds-on favorite, entering the regular season finale weekend to win the SEC. And when the Dogs were a dog, based on principle, precedent, we bet Georgia with points on the money line. It is what Kirby Smart does. They were a dog in Austin, and they won outright by 15 points. And then I started to dive back into the numbers of that game and how it played out and where these two teams have trended from that game in week number 8 on Saturday, October 19th. And this Georgia defense played its best game of the year against this Texas offense. But this Georgia defense is nothing like we have been accustomed to the last few seasons in college football. They're allowing 20.5 points per game. First time they've given up more than 20 since 2018. That's not even a damning thing. They're giving up more than 135 yards on the ground. They held Texas to only 29 yards in the first matchup. Quintravion Wiesner was not the lead back he is now. I can't believe I'm doing it. Longhorns -2.5 to win the SEC championship today in Atlanta. I know you guys are barking. You're always barking. I know you're barking for the next game as well. Big Ten championship in Indianapolis. How quickly those turntables are going back around. Both of you. I have known you for so long. We have done this show together for 3 full seasons. And both of you have looked at James Franklin against ranked foes and as an underdog and said, ha, 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 loser, because that's what the Nittany Lions have been. So right back to you.
Well,
how? Why?
The reality is I at least have a little saving grace. I've been singing a similar tune about Dan's Lanning for quite some time. I'm getting 3.5 here. Both of these teams played Ohio State. Both caught 3.5 at home. What's that about? Penn State just played Maryland and laid more points at home than Oregon did when they hosted Maryland. Well, what's that about? Ignore the Washington spread math that says this game is absolutely spot on. I think getting the hook is relevant here. I think the Penn State defense is the most reliable unit on the field. Trust me, I tried to back out of this. I wanted to take a Penn State team total over. And no, I can't. You know why? Because I'm not betting on Drew Aller alone. We're betting on Drew Aller together here. Come on, Abdul Carter.
Brother in arms, right? You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Cherries.
Whoa, I like that.
Right? Pull that lever, baby. Here's the thing. Penn State's 8-0 every time, 7-0, every time they pound the rock for over 200 yards. The game they lost against Ohio State, they only rushed for 120 on the ground. I think that changes today, but it's Drew Aller through the air. I think we get a high-scoring game. I'm on the over as well, 50.5. Last 10 games in the Big Ten championship, 49.7 points, but give me Penn State outright.
I guess I'm standing alone with a newcomer in the Big Ten. The Oregon Ducks -3.5, a number I bet last Saturday night, expecting it to look a lot better by the time we got to Indy. It has not. He is Kevin Walsh. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Conference Championship Saturday starts right now.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. So I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.